Okay, everybody. So, we talked about last week on our first step. We are still on the first step. I kind of want to push this first step out a few weeks. If you guys are okay with that, I would love to have you here for this journey. I kind of want to talk about things in between time. So, in the process of doing these meetings and facilitating them, I also want to discuss other things that come along in between if you guys are here for it. So, we talked about last week, we got into the first step, admitting that we have a problem, admitting that we need help. First step one is we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. We talked a little bit about this last time. We got into the disease of addiction. We talked about denial. We talked a little bit about hitting bottom of what got us to the stage of the first step. Okay, so I want to touch base on that again because I feel like it's a big thing. You know, our hitting rock bottom, your despair and your isolation. So question is, what crisis brought me to recovery? So there's some of you out there that maybe had recovered because maybe your children got took, maybe your family is coming down on you, maybe got arrested and you don't want to go back to jail again. Maybe it's harmed you health wise, physically, mentally, emotionally, and you're now realizing it. For me, my rock bottom was getting sentenced to 10 years, and then a year into my 10 years mandatory. As I said before, I done 13 years incarcerated. Not all together, not at once. I mean, I guess I might as well have. My first time going to prison, I was sentenced to 3 years with 5 years probation. I did 2 and some change off of that. Off of that sentence there. I got out. I was home for a few months. I went right back. I got out March of that year of 11, and I went straight back October of 11 with my 10-year mandatory bid. In that 10 years, it was kind of much like the 3-year process for me. In that first year, I was just trying to really wrap my mind around, or maybe not wrap my mind around, the fact of doing 10 years straight to the door. It takes a few months for us to really get into our sobriety, which comes first before recovery, is being sober from the chemicals that we were originally on or we were addicted to. So for me, being incarcerated had started me on that road, much like before, of starting my sobriety. So into my first year of that 10-year mandatory bid, I was just kind of trying to wrap my mind around the time frame that I had, around, wrapping my mind around the fact of being sober for those months, and really, when it really like hit home with me, when I really like let it hit, it's the being gone for 10 years away from my kids and my family, and understanding I'm going to miss so much, which I brought on myself, really. But it was within that first year where I had been contacting my in-laws and contacting my children, here and there. And I know that I needed help with my recovery. I had went into sobriety like multiple times through those years, from being a older teen up into my mid-20s. I was in and out. I had gotten probation one time before. I don't know how I completed it successfully, but I did end up completing it successfully. Went a year or two being sober, fall back into it. A few months sober, fall back into it. It just seemed like it was a never-ending cycle, which most of us anybody who's here understands that process. So a year into it, I make a call home, and I was told that my oldest daughter tried to take her life. For me, that was an eye-opener. And you're probably saying, Ashley, of course it's a fucking eye-opener. I mean, your kid tried to take her life. But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that when I grew up and I had kids, I always said that I would never put my children through any kind of trauma, that I would always try to do the best I could. And in reality, I did try to do the best I could with all that I knew and all I had been taught in my life. But when I really, she didn't want to talk to me, and she got on the phone with me, and in those few minutes that I was finally able to talk to her and for her to explain to me the pain that she felt inside was so heartbreaking that I know that I had been absent, you know what I'm saying? But low key and deep down in my mind, I had thought that maybe me being absent or not being there was helping them from me poisoning them with my trauma that I had had. But that wasn't the case. You know, me being absent was a big deal to them. And again, I'm sure you're saying, yeah, Ashley, of course. But to have my child come on and explain to me just how much I was going to miss, I knew I was going to miss a lot. But to have my oldest daughter sit there and tell me on that phone that she hated me and that I was the worst mother in the world and that she would not allow me to hurt her sisters the way I had hurt her, and that I was going to miss everything important in her life, which was, you know, her graduation, her prom, everything. And she was right. I missed everything down to her getting married. And it really sucks thinking about things like that. But at that moment, you know, I really knew my whole life that I really needed to make that first step. I just didn't know how. And people who have never been in addiction or anything like that cannot fathom how hard it is to come out of it once you get in it. But I made a decision then, and I went, and you know, you guys may have a different way of recovery. I remember going to my bunk in prison, and I remember dropping to my knees and telling God that I know we'd had this discussion before, but that I didn't, and I could admit that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to overcome the things that I had gone through. I didn't know where to start at, you know, first of all. And for many, taking that first step, that's what it is. And that's why I tell you guys a story and I share it with you guys, because I know for many it's taking that first step of, what if I go through withdrawal, and what if it kills me if you're doing some serious drugs, which all drugs are serious, but there's certain ones that coming off of withdrawal can really send you into medical illnesses. And sometimes for you not to survive some of them, mainly, you know, alcohol being one of those top ones. But it's a scary thought to really sit down and have to think about all the things you had done to people, to yourself, or all the things that had been done to you, to really like sit with those things and feel those things. And I think that's the main thing with addicts, is really sitting with the trauma, whether it be trauma that was caused to you or trauma you've caused to someone else, is actually sitting down with that and realizing that I'm not my mistakes. I'm not my addiction. I'm not those things. And I know that's super hard to say to yourself sometimes, but you really have to sit with it. You have to tell yourself that I'm not a fucking shitty mother. I'm not a shitty father. I'm not all these things. I have made shit decisions, but that doesn't make me a shitty individual. Now, other people may look at you and say otherwise. They may think you're a shitty individual. They may think you're a shitty ass parent. But if they've never gone through the things that you've gone through, they cannot at all begin to speak on it. I mean, they can state their opinion, of course. But in reality, if you don't know, then how can you really judge somebody else in that situation? So that question was, what crisis brought me to my recovery? It was the fact of the thought of my child wanting to take her own life because I was absent, because of the pain I caused her. Now, I don't know what caused you guys to get where you're at today or what you brought you here. And it really doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're here, and you're here still if you're here for the second video. So, what did I first recognize my addiction? When did I first recognize my addiction as a problem? Did I try to correct it? If so, how? If not, why not? When I first recognized my addiction as a problem is the very first time I went to prison. And I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know. I guess I really didn't look at it as a problem. It was quick money. It was an addiction in its own. You know, I for those of you who don't know, I went to prison for burglary, armed robbery, burglary of a dwelling, burglary of conveyance. That was my whole list. If you guys look me up, that is nothing but burglary, robbery. And I think in a sense it became an addiction in itself. For those of you who've ever been in a situation like that, I'm sure you can understand. For those of you that have sold drugs, you know, the quick money will get you on that path to thinking that this is not so bad, you know. So I recognized my addiction as a problem when I was being absent. But I tried so many times in those moments that I was sober to really sit with, I just thought maybe it was the addiction. Maybe if I just stayed away from the drugs, maybe if I stayed away from people who were doing drugs, that's what would get me through. But that's not the case. And I know that people say people, places, and things, but a lot of it starts in here. If you can work on what's in here, like we discussed in the last video, if you can really get to the core of things. I was just having a conversation with my partner this morning, and we were discussing this, and my process to explain to her thought process is that within your first year or two, like of your year or two of sobriety, you have to go through sobriety before you can get to recovery. Like stepping away from the drug and really figuring out what you need to do to stay out of addiction. Which brings us into recovery, which recovery is, again, I stated before, recovery isn't just about addiction. It's about recovery from trauma, of any type. Recovery is healing from a wound, physical, mental, or emotional. That's what recovery is. It's coming through and healing from whatever wounds we have. So first we have to go through our sobriety, and then within the first year or two, that's why a lot of people, when they hire people on, they talk about that first year or two, because that first year or two is so detrimental to a recovering addict. Because in those first 2 years is like really having to sit with yourself, by yourself, with what you have going on inside here and here. And that's where that's the test of times right there. I remember, and I've told my partner, I've told other people this at my meetings and things like this. I went through a severe, like, spiritual awakening, I think is what it was, or maybe, spiritual warfare, or whatever you want to call it. But I really just, for my first year, I ended up going to the psych doctor. I didn't get on psych meds, but I ended up going to them because, like, I'm seeing stuff and I'm hearing stuff and I'm not even high. And I started to realize that it had a lot to do with the devil. Like I said before, I'm not a religious individual. I am spiritual. I do believe in the devil and I do believe in God. Do I know who or what they do? I know that I've danced with the devil and I know how that feels. I've had an affair with him for many, many, many years. And I befriended a lot of my demons through that time. Now it's a very different walk that I do. And I know I'm walking with God. I know that what I'm doing, even if I don't go to church, even if I don't read my Bible all the time, I know that God's with me and I know that He got me through a lot. So if that's your journey, that's your journey. If you have another way of recovering, then you have another way of recovering. Like I told you before, when we talk about the spiritual part of things and the mindful recovery book that I was reading, that I shared with you guys last week. So I started to read with urges handled with care. Becoming more mindful is directly helpful to the process of recovery. For example, one of the challenges everyone trying to stop an addiction faces is that from time to time urges surface. These can be triggered by inner states such as disturbing thoughts and emotions, hunger, tiredness, or by cues in the environment such as driving past the house of a friend that used to drink with. Urges can be powerful, overwhelming desires. I've got to have a drink now. I've got to do drugs now. Or a sudden, subtle, vague discomfort, a barely noticeable blip on the screen of awareness. There's something I used to do in situations like this. Whereas now we switch it to something more positive. Again, they say once an addict, always an addict. It doesn't mean in the sense that you're always going to be a drug addict. It's in the sense of you're going to hold on and take hold of things just like you did that addiction. If you find satisfaction in those, if they make you happy, working out, staying busy. I find myself, when my mind gets busy, that I'm constantly picking up my house, because in those moments it's something I feel like I can't control. So I try to control what's around me, what I can control, because that is one of the biggest things that I've had to come through in the 14 years of my recovery that I've been in this, is understanding and sitting with it's hard sometimes to really sit with your trauma. It's hard sometimes to really sit when it gets loud in here and to really deal with those things. It gets overwhelming. And I'll be the first one to tell you that. But if you can sit with it, If you can set with it, then you can come up with a solution, which means a different way around it than what we used to do with the drug addiction. So now we find exercising, we find gardening, we find riding bikes, horses, painting, teaching, any of those things that we take hold of. So, powerlessness. This is what we said before. When you're in addiction, you may think you're powerful. At moments you feel powerful. At moments you feel like you could take over the fucking world. But the cause and the case is that's not true. Powerlessness is we react to this word in a variety of ways. Some of us recognize it as a more accurate description of a situation simply could not exist and admit our powerlessness with a sense of relief. Others recoil at the word like, you think that I was handling this. I had a hold of it. I'm just making this choice now. But if you're making this choice now, you obviously didn't have a hold of it. So we move on to over exactly what am I powerless of. You're powerless over your feelings, over your emotions, over how to handle daily life and certain things. And that's even for people that feel like they're functioning addicts. If you were a functioning addict, that would mean that, or if you were functioning, that would mean that you wouldn't really need the drugs. You think you're a functioning addict, but there's no such thing as a functioning addict. An addict is an addict. There's no functioning to it. You might start out with that thought in your mind, but that's not the case when it's all said and done. And some might debate me on that, and that's okay too. Like I said, everybody looks at things different, everybody heals different, everybody goes through their recovery different, everybody gets sober differently. There's so many different walks of life. There's recovery for cold turkeying, there's recovery from going to rehab, from prison, from just daily walks of life of just choosing not to do it. Maybe nothing bad happened, it's just you're tired of it. But either way, it's making that first step to realize that your life has become unmanageable and you are powerless over your life, over your feelings, over your emotions, which is causing you to be in that addiction. Unmanageability. Our first steps ask us to admit two things. One, that we are powerless over our addiction, and two, that our lives have become unmanageable. Actually, we would be hard-pressed to admit one without the other. Our unmanageability is the outward evidence of our powerlessness. There are two general types of unmanageability. Outward unmanageability, the kind that can be seen by others, and inner, a personal unmanageability. When we talked about this last time about how some people like low-key with it, where they think interpersonal unmanageability, where you realize that you need help, but low-key really nobody really knows, or you think maybe nobody knows. And then you have the outward unmanageability where you're out wrecking shit and causing problems and doing things to your children, to your family, to other people. I had that outward unmanageability. I was blatantly leaving my children at home for 2 and 3 days. I mean, never alone with their grandparents. They were always taken care of in any situation where I ever left them, and I can be truly grateful. Does that make me a better parent? Does that make me a better addict? Absolutely fucking not. So let's move on to the unmanageability part of it. I know a lot of y'all may think when I say, a part of that first step is reservations. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of acid reflux. I do apologize, you guys. Reservations. You guys think reservations and you think restaurant reservations, for those of you who don't know anything about recovery. Okay, so let me explain to you what a reservation is in recovery. It means that you have an opportunity to get sober. You blatantly have somebody offering you. This is just an example. There's many other examples, but this is the example I give you guys. Someone's offering you an opportunity to go and get clean. Somebody's offering you some time to go away. You might have to be gone for 6 months. You might have to be gone for 8 months or 18 months, or even a few years that you're getting this. But you have the option. You have the option to go home, and let's say that you don't get sentenced to prison and you're arrested or whatever, and you have an opportunity to go do a program, to be involved in community programs we have around here or somewhere else, wherever you're from, let's say. But you say to yourself, no, my kids need me. I need to go home. Now, mind you, this is the same children that you were leaving at home and leaving with your parents or your grandparents or whoever else that you're thinking about now, that you're worried about now that you've been sober for a few months, and you start thinking, oh, my kids, oh, my kids, oh, my mom, my dad, my brother, my uncle, my aunt, my grandparents, you know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, all these things come to mind, but you say to yourself, they need me. They need me. I can't go to a program. I can't do this. I can't, get involved in those meetings because, I got to be home with my family. Knowing damn well that you're just preparing for your next time of when you get high. If I get too far away from here, I won't be able to reach the dope boy. You know what I'm saying? If I get too far away from here, I won't be able to go down the road. If I get too far away from here, and let's say I'm taking a prescription, and now I got to get a new doctor or something. If I get too far, that is reservations. You're making reservations for your addiction. You're still you're riding the fence. You're straddling the fence. So you're still setting aside a little space for your addiction to be in. You know what I'm saying? Instead of jumping full force into us. And a lot of people do that, where they say, it's my kids, it's my mom, it's my dad, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. But in reality, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever the cause is, you're not there yet. And deep down inside, you're not ready to walk away yet. So you want to make sure that it's on hand, close by. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to get too far away. That's what we talk about when I think of reservations. That's how I can explain it to you guys. Reservations are usually tucked away in the back of our minds. We are not fully conscious of them, okay? So maybe you're not saying to yourself in your mind, you heard what I just said, but maybe you're not saying to yourself in your head, I need to be close by so I can contact my dope boy. Low-key, subconsciously, you really think that because you've been absent all this time and now you're sober, that you really want to get home to your family. But as an addict in your subconscious, that's what you're saying to yourself, because subconsciously, you're not ready yet. It's essential that we expose any reservations we have and cancel them right here and right now. So if you're thinking to yourself, let me tell you guys, when it comes to your addiction, you really need time with yourself. You really need time to really get to know yourself and to really learn to love yourself, because you cannot love someone else, including your children, if you do not love yourself. You're going to drag them through. You can't love your mom. You can't love your dad. You can't really love anybody properly if you can't love yourself properly. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, this is another question. Do I think I can still associate with the people connected with my addiction? Can I still go to the places where I use? Do I think it's wise to keep drugs or paraphernalia around just to remind myself or test myself of my recovery? If so, why? So with that said, do I think I can still associate with people connected with my addiction? So let me explain this to you guys. I have no problems with anybody, any dope boys, any friends, anybody that I've ever been with in my addiction. I have no problem with anyone. If you're watching this, I have no problem with you. I have no problem with any of them. But for me, as a recovering addict and 14 years of recovery, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want to go hang out. I'm not trying to go hang out with the same people that I got messed up with back in the day. I'm not trying to go and hang out with the dope boys and dope girls that I bought from back in the day. It doesn't matter how close we are, how friends we are, how much family we are. I'm not going to be at your home if you're still in that lifestyle. I don't care if you're my best friend in the entire fucking world. I'm not gonna, because I know I can't. I'm not saying I'm weak. I have never relapsed. And I'm not saying relapse is a bad thing. I'm not saying I'm weak and that's the reason that I can't go do this. But for me, that's where perception plays a big role in my life. A lot of people talk about perception. But I'm not going to be put in a situation where I've even been accused of it. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel about it. So with me, with my awkward little recluse self, I stay at home. I stay at home with my partner. I hang around my family. If I make new friends and they're in addiction or they're over drinking too much or overusing something that I catch wind of, again, no judgment, but deuces. I got to go. I can't be a part of this. And it's not because I'm scared of getting high. It's just I have worked so hard in my life to not be a part of that. So I'm not even going to let the perception of it take hold of anything. Do you understand? I'm not even going to let the perception, ain't nobody going to say Ashley's doing drugs again because she was hanging out here, and here. It's not the case. But now, again, I say I'm 14 years in recovery. It's not a thought that goes through my mind anytime after my brother passing, bills not being paid, having the hardest day in the world. And just because you're healed doesn't mean that these things aren't still there. We still have many scars. Just because I say I'm healed from my past traumas doesn't mean that it doesn't still exist. Those wounds are very much still there. I've just learned to live with them. I've learned to cope with those intrusive thoughts. I've learned to cope with those feelings when they come. And if I haven't, then I learn to as they come. What I tell myself in situations like this is I ask myself in certain moments where things get overwhelmed, I will sit down with myself for a few minutes and I say to myself, is this something that you can fix? Ashley, is this something that you can fix? Is this something that you can change? Is this something that can be done about this? And in my mind, if I state that it's something that I cannot control, if it's something that I cannot handle, if it's something that I cannot do or change, then I have to tell myself I have to let go. No matter how hard, no matter how deep, no matter how hurtful, I have to walk away from that situation. I know that now. But I also have situations where it's never a thought on my mind to go and get high. I've never thought about getting high. Not since I've been home from prison have I ever thought. And in the 5 years, even in the past, like say 10 of the 14, I can tell you right now, those thoughts of the mouth watering, the feelings that I used to get, they're no longer there because I got my power back. I learned the strength that I had within me. And that's what I want to teach you guys is how to get your power back. When we talk about this powerlessness in this first step, that's what it means. I thought I was in control. I thought I could control the drugs. I thought I could do all these things. I thought I was managing it, but I was not. I was not. I was a very weak individual. I was still very much a victim. And I was making myself a victim. And I didn't even realize it. Subconsciously, I was making myself the victim. I was holding myself in that box, in that place, And once I started to realize that, I needed to learn to let go of those things. I needed to learn to not let them take control of my life. I can't change what happened to me when I was a child. I can't go back and change the things that happened to me as an adult. I can't change my parents and make them better parents in the past. I can't change anything that's happened. I can't be a better parent to my children in the past. I can't go back and take none of that back. So what's left to do? I can't go forward if I'm steady looking back to my past, worrying about all the things that I've done. Past tense. Past tense. Done. It's already done. It's over with. And I know that sounds kind of harsh to some of you guys, but the moment you realize that you cannot change the past with your children, with your family, with hurt, with trauma, you as a child, any of those situations, what's done yesterday cannot be undone today. So let's move on tomorrow. Let's move on to the next day after that or the next day. Because I know for some, it takes a little bit longer. It took me a long time. It took me 2 prison sentences. One of those, a 10-year mandatory sentence to really get me on my toes with my recovery and to really put me on this road. And now I would just like to share with you guys in the world, if the day that you were able to find your power within you, the day that you're able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I love me. I love who I've become, flaws and all. I accept my trauma. I accept my past. I accept my mistakes. And I move on from here. And I try not to make those mistakes again. That's all we can do as humans, is acknowledge and try our hardest not to do it again. And if you can't make it tomorrow, then try the next day. But don't ever give up on yourself. That's what happens to us in addiction. Or maybe we never loved ourselves to begin with, or we stopped loving ourselves along the way. Whatever it is, I need you guys to get up and I need you guys to look in the mirror when you wake up in the morning. And no matter if you're in active addiction right now, if you're struggling right now, you may look the worst or maybe be in the worst position in your life and you're watching this video. I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to say to yourself, I cannot change the past, but tomorrow's a new day. Every day that you wake up with breath in your lungs is an opportunity to start over. That's what matters most. is putting forth the effort. There's going to be relapses. There's going to be times when you really don't want to sit with those issues. There's going to be times when that trauma gets a little too heavy and you really can't handle it. But I need you to remind yourself that if you've survived these things, you're a survivor. If you've survived these things, you can survive this addiction. If you've survived any of these things, I need you to give yourself a pat on the back and give yourself a little bit more credit than what you're giving yourself in your addiction. I know it's hard to look in that mirror. I know it's hard to think that you can be anything other than, especially if you come from a lifestyle or a family that comes from poverty, or you've never had anything in life, or you've never had any help or anybody to listen to you. I know how hard it is because I've been there. But I'm telling you right now, as someone who got into her recovery on her own with no help, no 12 steps, no nothing, just me and God just thugging it out. I'm telling you right now, the day that you really make the choice, like really genuinely get tired and make the choice, you can look at yourself in the mirror and you say to yourself, and even if you haven't made that choice yet, I want you to remind yourself that there are people, even if it's not your family, even if you don't have a family, if you don't have children, if you don't have anybody in your life, I'm telling you, you got me. And there's so many other people in this world that's like me. So I'm a reminder to you, you're not alone. You're not alone in this at all. You are amazing. You are worthy. You are worthy of everything, just as anybody else is. And I love you guys. And I'm going to tell y'all this after every fucking meeting that I do. I'm going to remind you, and I'm going to look you dead in your eyes like I am right now. And I'm going to tell you, I love you. You're not these things that you've done. You're not your mistakes. You're not your addiction. You're not your past. You're not your parents. You're not any of those things. You are you. And tomorrow when you wake up with the breath in your lungs, no matter how far you are or how far you've fallen, you got this. You got this, man. You are not alone. I love you guys. And I'll see y'all here next week.